So what is Electronics Watch proposing? What is worker-driven remedy?
Thank you very much, Olga, and good morning to everybody here. By way of context, let me say that Electronics Watch helps about 1,500 public sector buyers to promote and protect the rights of workers in their supply chains through direct support, through monitoring, and through remediation activities in their supply chains. We conduct worker-driven monitoring with civil society partners, including Gopinath's organizations and Joseph's organizations. And I think that Gopinath's and Joseph's examples in particular show now the need for a paradigm shift in which we all address rights violations in global supply chains. This paradigm shift is a shift from company-controlled human rights due diligence, which I think is the dominant paradigm today, to a more worker or rights holder-driven due diligence model where workers' rights, needs, and perspectives are paramount. So this means rethinking the objective of due diligence, not to necessarily primarily protect against reputational risk, but to protect workers from harm. They sometimes coincide, but they don't always coincide, those objectives. It means rethinking the process where workers or rights holders help to determine the remedy that is owed to them, supported by trade unions, supported by worker representatives, and sometimes by human rights defenders. The standard process of audits and corrective actions is every step along the way controlled by companies. And companies decide themselves what remedy is owed, if any. And this is no longer sufficient on its own. We need to rethink the outcomes of this process too. It cannot only be about corrective action or compliance, but it has to be about restoring those who have been harmed to a situation they would have been had they not suffered harm, or to a situation as close as possible to that. And this is what we're proposing then in the Principles for Worker-Driven Remedy, which is developed in collaboration with trade unions, with labor rights organizations, and with public buyers, and is based upon really exciting legal research conducted by Martina Trusnach and Olga Martin-Ortega at the University of Greenwich. And I should say these principles, which we have available at our website, we don't have them in hard copy here, but on our website they're available. I should say that the real inspiration for these principles are workers. Let me say, just by an example, we had a case a few years ago, similar to the cases that Joseph talked about, where Nepali migrant workers were working in Malaysia. They reported to us that, of course, they had paid fees to get their jobs. They were in debt bondage. Their employer in this case was actually the recruitment agent. And they told stories where they tried to go to the agent, to the employer, to say, hey, you haven't paid us for several months, we need our wages, and he threatened them with a knife. This was an unlicensed agent as well. And many of these workers also had fled previous abusive employers, so they didn't actually have legal standing in Malaysia anymore. We reported this to buyers. And the buyers did everything right by the corrective action book. These workers received compensation for the fees that they had paid. The illegitimate recruitment agent was driven out of business. But what happened is that these workers were never consulted anywhere along the process about the remedy. So what happened then is that these workers, they were left without a job. They were left without legal status, and they were driven underground into very abusive conditions. And so even though they had received some type of compensation, they said it might actually have been better off, they might have been better off if they hadn't reported these issues in the first place. So what we're suggesting is that this could actually have been avoided had these workers been at the table in the first place to ensure that their needs and perspectives were heard, and had the remedy been conducted according to the worker-driven remedy principles. These workers were really organized. They knew what they wanted, they knew what they needed, and it would have been to everybody's benefit to have them at the table here. So by that, we invite everybody here. We invite supply chain actors, stakeholders, and everybody to review these principles, to adapt them, to adopt them, to adapt them for your own use, and put them into practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Björn.